Arthur Schopenhauer was the quintessential pessimist, the original Debbie Downer. Just ask Stanford English professor Blakey Vermeulen.
His worldview was basically, look, it's a very fallen world. Everything kind of sucks.
But to be fair, as he saw it, everything did kind of suck.
He took this kind of grand tour of Europe when he was a young man, and he saw this famous kind of outdoor prison in France, the Ban de Toulon, and he sort of took that as kind of an image of what the world is like.
The image was very bleak, and his takeaway was that life is suffering, and he believed that starts at birth.
Do you know what we mean when we speak of the original sin?
Not exactly the stuff of self-help books, but Vermeulen says it can be a guiding principle.
We suffer for the sin of being born, and so therefore, try to be a little kinder because it sucks for other people as well as for yourself. I've always found this idea very therapeutic.
Not that he always took his own advice. Early in his career, as he struggled to get a foothold in academia, Schopenhauer was living in a boarding house and got into a confrontation.
He was very sensitive to noise. So one morning he heard his neighbor talking outside his vestibule. He got mad. He left his room and he got up and he picked his neighbor up and forcibly removed her from the vestibule. She immediately stumbled and fell down the stairs.
She sued him and won. Schopenhauer was forced to pay her a stipend for the rest of her life.
She lived for another 20 years, and when she died, he wrote just this little line in his journal, which was in Latin, it's annus obit abit onus, which means the old woman is dead, but also the old woman, aka the asshole, is dead. The burden is lifted. So that's our Schopenhauer. I mean, he's probably a terrible human being, but extremely funny.
To understand the unpleasant aspects of his demeanor, consider his early life.
Arthur Schopenhauer's family background has a lot to do with his psychic makeup and with the stance he takes towards the world, the sort of characteristic postures of his philosophy.
That's Michael Shagru, a philosophy professor, in a lecture recorded in 1992. He passed away in 2024. Schopenhauer was born in 1788 to a wealthy Dutch family. His father was a successful merchant, but he died when Arthur was just 17. The family suspected it was suicide. Shagru says Schopenhauer's mother was extremely cold and distant. She agreed to support his interest in academia on the condition that he leave home and stay gone. She actually called him an annoying know-it-all. His inheritance meant he had resources, but he was rootless.
He is at sea in the social world. He has no familial contacts.
He was not a social fellow. He once said, "Were I a king, my prime command would be, leave me alone." He never married, and he spent his time going on walks, playing the flute, and reading widely, and developing his philosophy, which pulled from ancient traditions. Schopenhauer was one of the first European intellectuals to bring Eastern spiritual thought into his work.
Schopenhauer has a powerful strain of Indian Eastern pessimism that I think is a combination of Hinduism and Buddhism.
He observed the fleeting nature of pleasure and said that humans are trapped in a cycle of seeking it only to lose it. Unlike pain, pleasure never lasts.
You never think, my friend Blakey is experiencing chronic pleasure. I mean, you don't that's not really a thing that we say about people.
But in his interpretation of Eastern philosophy, Schopenhauer saw pain and suffering as something to just accept.
It's a very old idea out of the ancient world that human lives are filled with pain. And actually the pain gets worse when we try to struggle against it or reject it.
In other words, breathe through the pain. Take pleasure where you can find it and get out of your own way.
He thought that the intellect was a big source of suffering. And once you try to kind of decenter the intellect and just accept that life is suffering, then you're going to be less miserable overall. And I think that's actually true, or I found it to be true in my own life.
I feel that life is divided up into the horrible and the miserable. Those are the two categories, you know. The horrible would be like, terminal cases, and blind people, cripples. I don't know how they get through life. It's amazing to me, and the miserable is everyone else. So when you go through life, you should be thankful that you're miserable.
For Philosophy Talk, I'm Mary Catherine O'Connor.